Hey Art Nerds, we are going to be walking through how to create different types of chairs using one-point perspective. So I have just a regular chair here, I have something more of an armchair, and then I also have a beanbag chair. So we're just going to go through these one at a time and skip through the video as you need for your own project. So I'm going to start off with this chair right here, and what I want you to remember is that every time we work with an object, it always starts off with a basic cube or rectangular prism. So I'm just going to flip this over because basically my chair here is going to be one of those cubes, and I'm going to be using perspective to make it look 3D. Okay, and then essentially what's going to end up happening is we're going to be cutting away at this cube to build our chair. Okay, and that's what's going to end up happening. Okay, so that is just sort of like the gist of how we're going to be creating a chair using one-point perspective. Okay, it's a little bit hard to see with the other image showing through, but it's all good. So I'm just going to pick a spot for here. Keep in mind that depending on where your object is going to be placed in your room, in relationship to that vanishing point is going to change what part of this chair that you will actually see. So for starters, let's just put one on this side so it's as close to my image as possible, assuming that I'm picking an image that's close to the angle that I'm going for my actual project. So if I want my chair here, I gotta make sure that I am creating my cube using some horizontal and vertical lines, using my triangle to help me if you have one. And I'm gonna have it leaning up against this wall and being a little bit of a distance from my back wall here. So one thing I do want to keep in mind is how tall is my room. If my room is about 8 feet tall, okay, this is about 4 feet tall, and you know, how big is 4 feet in comparison to the chair? Okay, that's something to keep in mind. So if I want my chair to be approximately 4 feet tall, okay, I'm just going to do a quick sketch going straight over. This is 4 feet high on the side of my wall, and I'm actually going to create an orthogonal that goes about that halfway. It's a little bit less, okay. And that's going to be sort of like the top of my chair because I want it about 4 feet high, okay. And then I'm going to continue by creating the sides of my chair. So these edges, okay, and they're just going to be vertical lines. They're going to be dropping down to my floor, okay. And even if it's an object that has a vertical line in real life, it will be a vertical line still here on your perspective drawing, okay. It is only those horizontal lines that adjust a little bit, okay. And notice how when I'm using my triangle, I'm making sure that the bottom edge of my triangle lines up with the bottom edge of my paper on the horizontal edge so I can create a nice vertical line. And I'm, you know, at the moment I'm kind of making a guess as to how wide my chair is going to be. Knowing that since it's tilted away from me, it's going to look a little bit smaller than I think it should be. And always keep in mind that we're drawing these lightly. So just in case you are drawing your chair and you're like, oh, that looks really wide for a chair, you can always go back and narrow it. And that's something that you always want to keep in mind. All right, and then from each of these points here, so I have the point here, those two touching the floor, and these 2 points that are touching my top orthogonal, because both of these are orthogonal lines, I am going to create some horizontal lines heading straight out from each of those points. So I'm lining this up on a vertical, and then I am having my horizontal line come from each of those points, okay? And I kind of want to overshot it, okay? It's a lot easier to make a line a little bit longer than erase it versus having to go back and make it longer. So then you have to remeasure everything. So to save time, just make your lines a little bit longer and it'll save you all that trouble. There we are, that's what I got. Notice how it is a much smaller space between these 2 lines than down here, and that's based on the relationship to that vanishing point there, so always keep that in mind. All right, and then to finish up drawing my rectangular prism, I'm just going to guesstimate how far out I want my chair to go. And then draw a line going straight up, connecting the two horizontals that are closest to me. So the top edge closest with the bottom edge closest, those 2 touch. So here and here. And then I'm going to do the same thing, but I can't just guess where the other vertical is. I'm actually going to use another orthogonal and to create that front bottom of my chair, okay, right here. And then I'm going to have my vertical line come straight from that intersection, and that is going to connect with that top edge. and then another orthogonal to connect where the front top matches up with the back top. Right there. So I'm going to erase all these extra lines so it's a lot easier for you to see. But you will notice that we basically have a simple cube left behind. And this is how much space our chair will take up before we start getting rid and cutting away of some parts of this cube. Okay? Right here, top edge, front edge. There's your top. You can see a little bit better now. Okay, so now the next thing we need to do is imagine what the profile of our chair kind of looks like. And I can see a little bit on here. Okay, it has sort of like a this shape to it, where I have the back of the chair, I have the seat of the chair, and then I have the leg of the chair. Okay, and obviously there's 2 additional legs and everything, but we're going to be getting to that in a short moment. But what I really want to focus on is this edge. What will be facing me? Okay. So these aren't anything that's exact science, okay? You're just sort of, you know, guessing about like how thick is my chair going to be, and then I'm going to make that edit on here, okay? Now there's going to be some times in which your chairs, the backs of them aren't straight backs, because this one might actually be more of a leaning chair, okay? And that's something that we're actually going to include on here for our example, but after we sort of get the basic shape of it. Okay, so that's sort of like my back end, and I'm going to end up having it curved just a little bit, and then I'm going to figure out where I want the top of my seat of my chair, and it's approximately, I don't know, it's a little bit under halfway, so if halfway I'm just eyeballing is here, I'm going to put it a little bit lower, and this seems like a really good spot. And then using that orthogonal to get this edge, okay, because remember that we have horizontal lines. These are parallel with the floor, and they're not coming any closer to us. And anything that's supposed to be parallel with the floor that's going further away, like this top front of my chair and this bottom front of my chair, those need to be those orthogonals. All right. And then I'm going to finish it up with another horizontal line and another orthogonal line. So line this up right here because I measured this from before. Right here, connecting it. Make it a little darker so you can see it, to that back edge of my chair, and then creating another orthogonal to tell me where that's going to stop. Okay, so this diamond right here, this is basically the seat right here, that top surface. Okay, and then now I need to add some thickness to my seat, and that's basically just marking a point, just guessing, and then having an orthogonal and a horizontal finish that up. So lining up my horizontal, line straight across, then creating another orthogonal. And when you know where your lines need to start and stop, you don't have to go all the way necessarily to that vanishing point. Create what you need and mark it. And I'm making mine a little bit darker so you're able to see it in comparison to all of my extra construction lines. So then it's a little bit less fuzzy as to what I need and what I'm going to eventually get rid of. All right. So now the next part I want to do is I'm going to actually get the back of this chair here, okay? And I want mine slightly curved, and this is where you have a little bit more freedom. So I want my chair to be about like this, nice, see how it has a nice round curve, and then I'm going to actually curve that freehand. Now what I need to keep in mind is that I want to have this space in between the top edge and the bottom edge to be the same. So I'm going to bring this in and try to keep that nice and even all the way down. Okay? And that's going to connect right here with the bottom of my chair. Okay? And if you ever want to make any edits, making things thicker and thinner, you can do that as you see fit, but I'm just going to leave things as they are here. Now you're probably wondering, how do I match this curve but on this side? Okay? Well, I know that it's going to start right here because that's where my orthogonal and my horizontal meet. That's right across from here. And I know that it needs to go to this back corner here, okay? So all I'm doing is I am recreating this curve but on this side. And if you rather focus on that negative space, so this space right here that I'm highlighting, okay? If you find using negative space to help you recreate curves, if those are a little tricky, I would include that line there and try to recreate that space. So it looks like I still have a little bit of space down here. Nice and narrow all the way. There, see, that's pretty much matching, and that's good. Bring that back here. And then I don't need this line here. I don't need this line here. I need, let's get rid of all these extra ones. I just need this top edge of my chair. And then keeping it a nice curve, since I want it curved like here. If you want to keep it nice and square, you absolutely can. You can just sort of adjust this step where we were curving it and have it be a straight up and down line, depending on what you need for your chair. All right, so now I'm going to work on the legs, okay? And the legs are all done basically like you're adding another rectangular prism here, 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 and here, and just in 4 different spots, okay? And the thing to keep in mind is you want to make sure they look like they are supposed to be matching. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick one leg to start with and eyeball how, make a guess how big I want each of the parts of the legs, okay? So here's one edge, and then I'm going to get the other edge on here, and I'm going to use this one leg to help me with the measurements for every other one, okay? So I'm going to darken this so you can see it. This is my final leg. I'm actually going to make this one just a hair skinnier because I think that's a little bit too thick. There we go. Okay, erasing a little bit that I don't need. And then I'm going to be building off this using some orthogonals. So if I want to have this leg to be just as wide as this one, I need to use an orthogonal to connect this bottom corner, vanishing point, and then I will be able to create, see I have a line here, it tells me how far back this edge needs to go, okay? And then on this front edge, I'm going to make it just a hair smaller than this one here. So then I have this, and then I do a horizontal line. I'm just going to freehand that one in since it's a little one, and then connect it. And then you're going to use a vertical line to finish that leg. Okay? So I'm trying to create the illusion that they are about the same size, okay? And then you're going to repeat the process to finish all the other legs, okay? I'm just going to freehand it really quick. You got a horizontal line, an extra horizontal line. You're going to use an orthogonal to make the depth there that you're going to use so it matches the opposite chair leg, horizontal. And then you're going to have these drop down as well, okay? Right here, here. Okay, so you end up getting legs like this, okay? So I kind of sped through that a little bit, but you can pause this whenever you want. Okay, so that's essentially what it's going to kind of look like. And keep in mind that as you rotate your chairs and have them in relationship to that vanishing point, they change a little bit. So I did a couple more of these. This is where the chair is straight on. Notice how you see more of the top and you don't see much of the sides. And then you see the side of the chair on this one, but you also see the back of it. Okay, and that's something to also keep in mind as these kind of rotate and things like that. All right. So this process is exactly the same as what you'd be doing for something like an armchair, okay? The armchair, you just have a bigger cube, okay? It's not going to be quite as tall, quite as skinny. It'll be a lot taller and chunkier. And we're going to try to put it, let's put it right here, smack dab in the middle, okay? So I'm going to set this off to the side so we have a little bit more space. I'm going to imagine that this is going to be just a hair shorter than 4 feet. So I'm going to do a horizontal line so I have the top back of my chair. And I'm going to create some vertical lines to get either side of my chair. And I'm going to have it about center underneath that vanishing point. All right. So I'm starting with this nice back, okay, and this is just the back section of my chair. And since I want it to look like it's kind of going away from the wall, I'm going to be using orthogonals to create the illusion that's coming closer, okay. So I'm going to, once again, line up my vanishing point on each of the corners of my chair. Or now it's an armchair. Growing outwards, out from here, and out from here, okay? You can always adjust the width and the height of your object, whatever you're drawing, early on, and I really encourage that. Okay, don't ever be afraid to erase things that aren't turning out quite right. I'm thinking this is about how far I want it to go back, so I'm going to throw in a nice horizontal line, and that will mark this front of my chair. Okay, this front right here. All right, and then I'm going to have some vertical lines coming straight up, and they're going to connect those two orthogonals, the one for the top edge and the one for the bottom edge. So here is my basic cube. Okay, then of course I'll just whip in a horizontal line right there. Okay, we don't need that eventually, so it's okay. All right, so this is basically my basic shape that I'm going to be filling up with my chair itself. Okay, and notice how it's a little bit taller in the back than it is in the front. Okay, there's a space underneath, so those are things that I want to kind of start blocking out. Okay, so I'm going to quick add that space underneath my chair, and you want this line actually planned out going all the way around, because that space is all the way around on my actual chair. So I'm going to use my orthogonal to create that space through my entire cube that I'm drawing. Okay, so you can see that space right there. I'm going to eventually have some legs. I'm actually going to just draw on a leg right here. Here's a leg. Here's a leg, so you can really see that location there. And now I'm going to be working on just this front view of my chair, and that's kind of a U shape, slightly skewed U shape. All right, and then we also have the cushion, and then we'll also have the back of the chair itself. Okay, and then if you want, you can throw in that pillow. All right. So this is the kind of thing that I am trying to recreate. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to figure out how wide do I want those sides. Well, I am going to make them about, let's see, about this wide. Seems pretty nice. Okay, always block things out before you start adding curves and things like that. Okay, those curves can really throw you off in trying to get the perspective correct. All right. And then I want this top edge of my chair itself, and then also of the cushion, so I can get rid of this line, which is supposed to be the wall, division between the wall and the floor. I don't need to worry about that. I don't see through there. Okay, so erase a couple of the extra bits. Gonna make that cushion. Actually, I think this line that I created right here, that's supposed to be the space between the chair and the floor. I think that's a very nice line for the thickness of that bottom section of my chair. And then I can recreate that same thickness about for that cushion. Okay, and now I'm going to kind of go over some of our lines so they're a little bit easier to see. Okay, so this is the bottom of my chair right here. Okay, and I'm only going over them dark so you can see them much better, and then we don't have to worry too much about those construction lines. Here is that bottom of the cushion. All right, and that cushion is a nice rounded edge square piece, so I'm throwing in some curves on those edges so they're not so sharp. Okay, and then I'm going to erase some of these extra bits. Do you see that front end of the chair a little bit more? All right, and then it's a very gentle curve, not too much. Okay, go into that top edge. So I'm not really going to add it for my sketch that I'm going to do for you, but you can add it if you find it necessary. Okay, and then I know that this top is going to follow this orthogonal edge, and then there's going to be an orthogonal here and here, and that's this width of my armchair itself. So I'm actually just going to end up drawing just a curved line because I don't want it to be straight, heading straight to that vanishing point. And then there's gentle line here, gentle line here. I don't want this extra lines and stuff there. There we go. Okay. And then to finish the top edge of my cushion, okay, my cushion is a flat surface that's going further away. So if I want something parallel with the floor, but looking like it's going further away, I need to use those orthogonals, okay? And this is how I'm going to get the rest of my cushion to complete the illusion of being 3D with my chair itself, okay? And notice since my chair is actually kind of has a rounded back, I don't want this to be a nice square in the back. I'm going to kind of round this a little bit. And that will complete that illusion that this chair is round. If we erase a lot of those construction lines, things appear a lot cleaner, but also it's a little bit more clear as to where things are at within the image. Okay. Now, sometimes when you have these little feet on your chair, sometimes you might notice, depending on where it's locating, part of the bottom here. But since our line was way up here, okay, our legs would have been right here and right here, and we wouldn't have been able to see them. So keep that in mind, because sometimes if you only have two legs on it, it looks funny because you should be able to see the back legs. Kind of like with our chair, if we only put these two and did not put the other two there. Okay, so that's basically how you make some sort of armchair from this perspective, okay? It's a little bit different when you turn it to the side. You want to take a look at the profile view. So like my profile view would look a little bit more blocky, especially because mine has a weird shape to it. And not all chairs have those feet on the bottom. So when you don't have those feet on the bottom, it's actually way easier because then it just goes flat with the floor and it's wonderful. Okay, so that's basically how you can draw a chair, specifically from this perspective. Always ask questions if you have you're curious about other perspectives on them, especially if it's different from the image that you are working from. All right. And then the last type of chair I wanted to show you guys a little bit about, and this one's just going to be a quick one, and that is how to work with something like a beanbag, okay? And creating something like a beanbag can be kind of tricky using one-point perspective. That's why sometimes I usually just focus on how tall I want the object itself and where I want it placed, okay, versus focusing on the perspective. So let's say I'm going to put it in, I'm going to put it right here. So it's going to be kind of reverse from what we see here. Now, I don't want it 4 feet tall, okay, which is about like what I have for my chairs and stuff, okay, because, let's see, 4 feet's probably about like right here, okay. I only want it like 2 feet off the ground. It's just one of those squish ones, okay, so I only want it about halfway. So I'm going to create an orthogonal that's going at that 2 feet height. So this is 2 feet tall, and this is 2 feet tall, okay. It only looks like it's bigger because it's closer to me, okay. So now I want to insert my beanbag, but right here, okay. And so I can start off with creating just like a real sketch. I don't have to even be super specific with it, but doing kind of like a sketch with having my cube in there, okay. It doesn't have to be anything really fancy. I just want to kind of block out the size of it, okay. And this gives me an idea of how much space it's going to take up, okay. So nothing too fancy, okay. Now, when we do something like this beanbag, okay, notice how it doesn't have any flat edges at all, okay. So what I'm trying to do is recreate this curve on the bottom, okay, and I'm going to recreate the curve on the side. So I'm basically making sort of like a lumpy oval, okay, and then having this kind of continue on. It's a little bit thicker, so I want it to go all the way out here. I'm just trying to touch all the edges of that cube that I created, and then trying to have a curved version of this orthogonal right here, so it looks like it's going off into the distance just a hair, okay. And the other thing I want to add, okay, looks like it has, where your butt's gonna go, okay, so that's gonna be right here. And one thing I want you to notice when you look at beanbags, it's a nice flat crease. That's where the front, you can tell where the front of the beanbag is, and it looks like all of the curves lead and sink into that pit within the bean bag. Okay, so that's one of the things that I want you to notice, is that all those curves go into that pit. Okay, there's always a couple more details here and there, but that is basically what you have right there. Okay, bean bags are not too tricky. I really recommend, if you want a bean bag facing this way, find a picture of this but flip-flopped, so you can sort of almost just copy it after sort of blocking out its size. Okay, or if you find a picture like this, try to find a spot to stick them in. So I would probably try to stick them in right here, because it makes it a lot more easy on myself. Okay, and I kind of have a couple sketches right here of what your beanbag would look like if it's from this view, from the front view, where everything's very more centered, including that pit. Okay, and then this one's a little bit more to the left, like I showed in our example there. So these are some of the basic ways of getting started drawing some different types of chairs in perspective. Okay, the best advice I have for you is to find an image that sort of matches where you would like to put it in the first place. It makes it a lot easier to visualize what the object will look like from that perspective. Anyways, that's all I have for you on chairs. Check out my other videos.